And boom, we are live. What's up, everybody? Couple Casuals Podcast, Quick Rips, episode number 10. I'm your host, Stefano, and we're going to talk about another political type of shenanigans that have been going on here in Canada. It's been a wild 3 years with the Liberals in power. The primary problem, I think, resulting in a lot of the things that we've been experiencing in the past couple of years. A lot of them are coming from our leadership, bad policy, bad decisions, bad spending, and is leading us to the situation we're in today. Interest rates are rising rapidly. People are drowning. Your purchasing power has gone down, and our housing market is more emotional than Amber Heard. It's getting pretty out of hand if you think about it. So recently, the Liberals and Trudeau, they actually announced that finally the ArriveCAN app is going to be removed. It's finally going to be done. It took long enough, to say the least. All these different ups and downs and inconsistencies and transitions that we went through as Canadians. One of the last ones to relieve these COVID restrictions, these travel restrictions. And now finally, as effective on October 1st, all travelers, regardless of citizenship, will no longer have to submit public health information through the ArriveCAN app, aka the ArriveCATS app. One of the main disasters for the reasoning, for example, like Toronto Pearson being backed up and absolutely delayed. And even still, they didn't want to relieve it, but we'll get into that shortly. They won't have to provide proof of vaccination. There it is right there. The proof of vaccination. What the truckers, convoys, and all these people were pretty much fighting for was that they didn't want to have to advise random people, their vaccination status, or even better, the government, and even more precise, the Liberals. They don't want to do that. They want to be able to work with the freedom of choice to be able to decide if they want to get vaccinated or not. That was the main issue throughout the pandemic, which is very interesting now to see that everything is passed and we're kind of just moving on and we're just forgetting about it like it's just whatever. We have to really remember what Liberals, Trudeau, these types of people put us through in the past 3 years. They made you fight with your brothers. They made you fight with your sisters. They made you fight with your family. They made you fight with your friends. They made you fight with your job. They made you go through absolute hell over this vaccine that they wanted you to get, and there was no questions or negotiatings at all. And they demonized people who didn't want to do it, and they made you feel terrible. You were the bad person. You were precisely the problem, and they divided our country. That's what they did. That's precisely here in Canada. That's where we're speaking from. They absolutely divided us. Already in the unknown area that we were with this pandemic, it was added controversy and added issues from politicians. That's what we have to understand, from politicians that created more of a negative atmosphere, created more of a contentious atmosphere through their unreasonable, inconsistent policies. A lot of people had to pick between their livelihood, their jobs, and their health decisions. That's what it was. We were just told there was only one way, and that's it. You need to get vaccinated, and that's it. If you don't want to get vaccinated, you can't travel, and you can't keep your job. And now, a lot of those people, those friends, and those people that used to argue with about this certain thing or was very uncomfortable to be around them, now they don't say nothing. I don't hear them say nothing. Maybe they are. Maybe they're still pro-vaccine. They want you to wear 15 masks, especially when you go to sleep and when you're driving your car. That doesn't really happen anymore, I don't think. Now they're a little bit quiet. It's kind of like the truth surfaced, which it always does, and then now they're just like, yeah, I don't care about that. I'm not even talking about that. What's that over there? Wait a minute. Like, don't you remember how you were treating us like not too long ago? Don't you remember all the problems that you were creating under this mentality from Liberals in particular? Don't you remember that? That wasn't even that long ago. You guys caused a disaster over this vaccine that people were still getting sick rapidly throughout. So that's one of the things. They're not going to have to provide proof of vaccination. They're not going to have to undergo pre or non-arrival testing. They're not going to have to carry out COVID-19 related quarantine or isolation. Another fucking joke. Not going to monitor and report if they develop signs of symptoms of COVID-19 upon arriving in Canada. And you saw like throughout the how these things changed. At first it was like, if you're vaccinated, you only have to quarantine for X amount of days. If you're unvaccinated, you have to quarantine for more X amount of days. And then now it's just like, okay, you know what? Just forget it. It's all good. And by me saying this, I don't think the best way forward is for us to just like hold people like accountable to a degree where it's like you said this and now I can never forgive you for that. And we have to play what the Liberals did, and we have to play what these sort of people did and demonize you and make you the bad person. No, but we need to acknowledge the reality of what did happen over the past 2-3 years. All the problems that were man-created, that were created in result of this catastrophe. And a lot of it came from the Liberal government. That's the reality of the situation. So the only thing that we can take from that, you got to vote. And that's where your power is, because we look at this ArriveCAN app that's being removed. Well, that was removed rather. It happened because of, I think, this is my opinion, I think it happened because Pierre Poilievre has won the leadership of the Conservative Party. And now it's put us in a situation where we see, okay, this guy is rising up. He absolutely destroyed the other candidates in that race for the Conservative leadership. And a lot of that is because of what he stands for, or at least that's what he's saying he's going to stand for, is like the freedom of choice. He wants you to make your own decisions. He doesn't want big government. Liberals want big government, more control, the specific Liberal government. We've seen a lot of these policies created by Liberals, and Pierre is running against that. But this ArriveCAN app, a lot of it, I attribute it being removed to the Conservative Party of Canada. They seem to be going in a more individual choice, freedom aspect of things, the way they're orienting themselves. Obviously, very, very mindful of our financial spending, and they talk a lot about that. They will talk a lot about decreasing taxes. Of course, critics will say this is all empty promises, this and that, but we will see. We do know how terrible the Liberals have done, and we do know the absolute disaster that they have created in the past 3 years, especially through COVID. There's a saying, you always capitalize on a catastrophe, and I think that's what the Liberals did. He literally said himself in the pandemic, I'm not concerned about monetary policy. How can you say that as the leader of Canada? Now we look at our situation, our financial situation in Canada, all these different things compounded together are drowning Canadians. The interest rates are going literally through the roof, no pun intended. That's all in result of bad policy and bad financial decision makings by our leaders, by Trudeau in particular. So let's touch on this a little bit more about the ArriveCAN, because it is interesting to see where we are now, because one of the major problems that we did have was our airports were backed up like no degree. And then the transport minister, the guy who looks literally like a rat, was saying it's not because of these COVID restrictions and COVID policies. But at the end of the day, the majority of workers a lot of workers, let's say at the airport, were terminated because they weren't vaccinated. So we lost all those employees. And the same thing for the hospitals, by the way. The hospitals are in shambles as well in Canada because a lot of the nurses still cannot get their job back because they're not vaccinated. So this stuff is still going on, and it's absolutely mind-boggling to see. But sticking on the airports, one of the things that was an absolute disaster was this ArriveCAN app, and then all the different stuff that we had to deal with in result of COVID policies that would back up the airports, and on top of that, compounded with the lack of employees. And then even if you go hire more employees, you got to train them, you got to allocate time to that. It's a disaster. There's no reason why we should have had this ArriveCAN app for as long as we did. And now another thing that was really actually mind-boggling for, I'm going to play this video here for Canadians to see, is the actual cost that this ArriveCAN app actually costed Canadians and taxpayers. Let's listen to this.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians were shocked to learn that the ArriveCAN app cost this government $54 million. That's more than twice the original estimate. But wait, it gets better. Last week we learned that most of that money went to a company with no and only 5 staff. This government was using this company to shield subcontractors from accountability and transparency. Canadians want answers. They deserve to know where their money went.
Look at that. That's an absolute disaster. The Border Service Agency explains why the ArriveCAN app cost Canadians $54 million. $54 million for backed up airports, headaches, and increased anxiety while traveling. That's what it was. You had to check in with the government, let people know, okay, Mr. Trudeau, is it okay if I leave over there to the Dominican Republic for a bit? All right, thank you. I appreciate it. I am vaccinated actually triple times. I'm considering my 4th. So a little breakdown of some of the things that cost. So the tech industry experts were shocked to hear that the Ottawa had set aside $54 million to build an app over more than 2 years. The project period ends in March 2023. Obviously, it's done now, no longer required. Let's look at some of the breakdowns here, what it actually cost and why. The ArriveCAN app was downloaded more than 18 million times to expedite their border crossing process. Oof. Okay, so the initial version and updates, $8.8 million. The Fed spent $80,000 on the creation of the first version of the ArriveCAN app for Android and iOS, followed by $8.8 million for more than 70 releases of the app and websites over the past 2 years. The Service Canada call center cost $7.5 million. The data management cost $5.3 million. The indirect costs cost $4.9 million. What does that even mean? These costs included employee benefits, accommodations, and payments to the government departments. Vaccine credential authentication cost $4.6 million. To verify your vaccine, that, by the way, you can still get sick and you can still spread it, do all that shit, but we need to spend $5 million on that. Cloud hosting and IT services cost 9.1. Tech support costs 4.5. Cybersecurity costs 2.3. The accessibility costs 1.7. Project management costs 1.6. Contingency costs 3.8. Listen, at the end of the day, finally this app is gone and Canadians can travel freely now. Unfortunately, some places still in the States. I don't know, this is a question like maybe that you guys can help answer, because everyone keeps asking, can we go to the United States now? I don't know. I don't think so, because you got sleepy Joe Biden over there who was like, oh, yeah, what's your vaccine? You got your vaccine? He's over there sleeping, and apparently you still cannot enter the United States unless you're vaccinated. I can't believe that we're still saying that. But anyways, that's all for today on the ArriveCAN app, aka the ArriveCATS app. Oof.